Welcome to Showing Up Solo, your go-to source for solopreneur success in the digital world. You're not just running a business, you're wearing all the hats, from CEO to content creator. What if I told you there's a way to master online marketing without sacrificing all your time? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Showing Up Solo. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Maggie Patterson, content marketing expert and founder of Scoop Studios. Maggie, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm super excited to be here because solopreneurs are like my favorite people in the business world.
I love that. I love that. Well, speaking of solopreneurs, could you just tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, about your business?
Yeah, so I started my business actually as a solopreneur just over 19 years ago, and I was a solopreneur for a really, really long time. And a lot of the things I talk about, even now that I'm an agency owner, really come from, kind of that hard-won wisdom. And one of the things I do now is I do mentor a lot of solopreneurs, and there are just a number of foundational things that when you are a team of one, that you run into roadblocks. There's certain you can control, right? And I think one of the things, and I'm sure you have this experience, right? A lot of people think, oh, I'm solo, like I'm going to cap out at this certain level, or I can't do this, and it's like, no, you can. It's just, you might have to be creative about how you do it. You might have to learn how to do things in a way that you set different boundaries with clients. Because I love solopreneurs and I want them to have the businesses they want to have versus just kind of settling for kind of like, oh, well, this is good enough.
Or selling because you're told to, like, oh, you need to be at 7 figures now. And
yes. Or a lot of people fall into the trap of, I call them accidental agency owners. They feel like they want to make more money, and the only way to do that is to hire. And then I'm like, get in there, and I'm like, oh wait, there's all these other things you could be doing. You've got pricing, you could be selling strategy, you could be managing your expenses in this way. Like sometimes you just need to be creative as a solo business owner, if you don't want to hire. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a team, but a lot of the solopreneurs I talk to like really and truly don't want that, but then they feel really stuck.
I'm guilty. I found myself building an agency within the first year of my business, and then found myself not doing any of the work I actually enjoyed doing.
Yes.
And not making any money. I was just being like the middleman going from myself to my contractors. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And I think I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to talk about charging for strategy and how to sell strategy. Yes. And this is really interesting for me because I started out very much as a doer. I started offering virtual assistant services and then social media marketing, copywriting, and I was very much, these are the deliverables. I'll charge you this much for this many posts. And I would offer just a monthly call with my clients just to get the information I needed to write that content. And then those would turn into strategy sessions. And like the piece of feedback I got consistently from clients was that their favorite and most valuable part of my services was those calls.
Yeah.
Was I charging for those calls? Not at all. Not at all. And now I find myself in an interesting position because I do coaching. So I do charge for that now, but I have got clients who retain me for ongoing strategic support. And I still don't quite know how to, I feel comfortable charging for like a 1 hour session, but trying to incorporate ongoing strategic support, it's such a intangible thing. So I'm very excited. And I think my listeners are probably very excited to have you here today to talk about this. So let's dive in. You were the one who reached out with this topic. What made you want to talk about this to my audience?
So the reason I talk about selling strategy so much is because personally for me and my business, this unlocked a lot of not just like growth, but confidence. How clients interacted with me is very different because I would fall into this situation. I'm sure this is really, familiar for a lot of listeners, is you run into a couple situations. You're writing proposals and you're doing so much work and you're essentially giving away your expertise, your thought leadership, you know, all your skill is going into something and it's just free? What? Like, and then they don't hire you? Like, how frustrating is that? Or, my favorite, this used to happen to me a lot when I was doing a lot of copywriting. I would have ongoing retainer clients that I worked with all the time, and then they would hire some fancy big name person to do strategy. And I was like, what? So, you have your clients undervaluing you, you're not charging for it. You're starting to feel very you're feeling some kind of way about this, right? It starts to
Mhm.
shake your confidence. And if you can kind of shift that around so that you are coming into your client engagements with anyone you are potentially going to work with and be like, stake in the ground, like we have to do strategy work first, and this is the way we're going to approach it. And here's how I do this makes a huge difference because you are taking control and you are positioning yourself in a way where you are the expert and you are the leader. Too many service providers, what we fall into the trap of doing is being like, okay, great, I'm just going to do the deliverable thing, and we become order takers. And instead of being order takers, we need to really be able to put that strategy and our strategist hat out first so that we are attracting and working with clients that really and truly value that and will pay for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's the transformation even with my own business when I went from having hour-long discovery calls with potential clients and sending them proposals with it. This is what I suggest you do, who then, like you said, didn't always buy, to having 20-minute conversations with people and then saying, okay, we've got a lot to talk about. I think it would be really great if we had a power hour. Here's the link to book it, pay up front. And then they show up ready to, like, because they've got skin in the game now. They show up
Yeah.
really ready to listen and to get your expertise, and you don't feel like you have to hold anything back because you've been paid for your time, and then you can just barf out all your expert knowledge, and then more times than not they end up becoming a client, and you've actually like being paid for selling to them by.
And you're not in a situation where you are selling them things that aren't right for them. You are learning their business. There's paid discovery. And I always say to people, like, if you are doing hour-long consult calls or discovery calls, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of that call is for us to see if there's a mutual fit and then talk about how we're going to work together, not for me to wow you with all my skills. Like if I have to spend an hour convincing you and giving you stuff for free, like that's not a good start to a relationship.
No, and actually that's one of the things I often talk about with my coaching clients is when you're having a discovery call with a client, they're not interviewing you, you're interviewing them.
Yeah.
You're figuring out if there's someone you want to work with, not trying to convince them to work with you. And I think when you switch that mindset, it transforms the entire process. You'll find you'll get a lot more sales that way too, because again, you're going in there with more confidence and you're like, you have to convince me that you're right, not vice versa.
Yeah,
So
and I think here's the beautiful thing about whether you're selling a strategy session like a power or like what you were saying, you're able to show up on that call in a very different way because
mhm.
you are able to say, this is how it works. Is it a fit? Not, oh, what do you want? Let me contort myself around it so I can maybe get you as a client.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do just show up I feel like you become a better service provider when
Mhm.
you're paid. I think
Yes.
it's just because you show up and you're like, yeah, I am happy to just give you everything I've got because I know I'm going to get paid fairly for doing
Yes.
this. So you're going to get everything, the cream of the crop, brain space for this
Exactly.
time. Yeah. So, how do you go about selling strategy? Like, if I've got listeners here who haven't reached this point yet, how how can they how do they know if they should be charging for strategy, and how can they start integrating that into their sales process?
So, I would really look up front for the side. So the things we just talked about, are you writing proposals that, you feel like you're giving away? You're feeling resentful of your current clients because you're not being paid appropriately for your skills and strategy work you're doing. You're doing these hour-long discovery calls. those are some of the signs. The other sign I would really look for is, are you running into a situation where your available hours and what you're able to make in that time is capped? That's a sign you're probably not charging for your strategy work, and you are probably not um, positioning yourself in a way that your expertise and your skills are really coming through. And so the real goal is to sell strategy so that you are getting paid for that experience, you're getting paid for those skills, and your strategic thinking is being valued. So those are kind of the signs. And I always like to tap into the emotional side. If you're feeling frustrated, feeling resentful that you've put this time and effort into this and like a lot of care, that's probably a sign it's time for you to start charging for strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're feeling resentful of your clients or what you're getting paid for it, then it's not adding up. You need to be charging more because um you need to feel like, oh, yeah, no, this is totally worth it. I'm so psyched that I get to do this for this money, instead of
Yeah, and you
yeah,
like I love that you brought up the excitement because the thing that a lot of us fall into is we do very transactional tasks when we have much more to offer. And for us to do those transactional tasks really well, we need to be doing the transformational strategy work up front. When a client comes to you and says, "Hey, I need a new website, and I need you to write copy for the website." If you just cut into writing copy and there's no content strategy behind it, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're also doing the client a disservice. So we're able to do work that actually has a bigger impact on our clients while also benefiting us and letting us do work that's more challenging and exciting for us to do.
yeah, I completely agree with that. It's the website is a great example, um, because for example, I coach clients through writing their website copy. So it's like a team effort. I give them
Yeah.
feedback and input. I'm actually just giving them the strategic support. But then they'll want help building it. And so for that, I just charge like a flat rate. I'm like, this is my per page rate. I'll just build it for you because all the strategy work's done. But if someone
Yes.
came to me who I've not interacted with wanting help doing a website, like you, unless they've already gone to someone else and had all the copywriting done and they're just looking for someone to build it,
Yep.
you've got to put the strategy in there.
Yep.
But I do know from personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners are feeling this too, is how do you know that you're doing strategy work? Like, how do you go about like when you're starting out? I remember my first prices were very much deliverables based. I came from an employee mindset working in corporate. So I came from the charging hourly, and it was hard enough switching out of the charging for my time
Yeah.
to charging for deliverables. And charging for deliverables was a huge help in getting
Yeah.
out of that hourly mindset instead of going, oh, this blog post might take me an hour, it might take me 4 hours. I go, this is like the max it could take me. So I'm just going to charge this flat rate. And
Yeah.
then if I do it quicker, I've made more money from it. That mindset was a huge help in the beginning. But like we've just discussed, that mindset then can be limiting the more you fill up your roster of clients. So how does one go about figuring out when
Yeah.
and where to charge for strategy?
So there's a really kind of good way to look at this is you are probably doing the strategy work, but it gets hidden in the tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So you will generally, this will be something you're doing, not necessarily known to your clients, not necessarily even that's super tangible to start, but it's something you're doing time and time again for your own well-being and the success of the project. And this is generally like, it's very rare that you should be like, I'm just going to create this strategy offer out of nowhere. It's probably, if you're a copywriter, it's probably you're doing some of that content strategy up front. If you're a coach, you're probably doing some of that discovery, like coming up with a plan. You're probably doing these things without even recognizing it. And if you are in a place business wise where you are constantly feeling like every single project you're undercharging for it, it's because you're not charging for strategy. I can guarantee it. You are pricing everything as tactical work and you are not accounting for the strategy parts up there that you're just kind of doing for your own the sake of the success of the projects. And that where I really started to notice this was doing a lot of communication strategy. I was doing a lot of content strategy, and I was just doing this hidden away to clients. And then one day I was like, why? Why are when I worked in an agency, like we would charge for this, and this is where the money was. So what am I doing this for free? So really looking for that piece. And then the other part is, um, there is a shift that you have to go through, and you might not end up getting yeses from clients, but really having the focus on being like, this is a non-negotiable. This is how we start an engagement. And what I love about this is you get rid of people who aren't going to value that, but you set yourself up with every single client by putting that strategy first in such a better, like you are going to have better results. Everyone's going to be happier because you are actually able to do things the way they need to be done versus just kind of winging it. And I can kind of walk through the steps I see in the strategy process that you have to nail all of them, but you really have to be willing to be like, yeah, this is the way I do things. It's not a negotiable. And I know when I started doing this, people were like, but I don't want to pay for that. I'd be like, well, I'm not working with you then.
Yeah. Well, and I feel that too. I remember the shift, and especially when you're moving with clients you've worked with before to this new strategy. But I will say my experience with newer clients is when I say, okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to start with a power hour or something, so let's do that first, and then we'll know what service is right for you going forward or something. The number of times I've had people come out of those sessions and going, oh my God, that was worth every penny. That was amazing. Yeah. It's like, it's just mind blowing because they've already set that, because you've given them this expectation that your brain is valuable. Mm-hmm. They go into it thinking it, and then they're like, yeah, I totally feel like I got everything I wanted from that. And then they're expecting that in the rest of the process. Whereas when we just don't talk about it, we don't, even if you like slide the fee into the pricing, then they don't value it the same, especially if you're with boundaries and stuff. If you're super accessible, if your brain is just like an open book, it's supply and demand, right? They're not going to value it the more accessible your brain is.
Are you ready to supercharge your online community growth? Unlock the secret to crafting irresistible free resources and creating landing pages that captivate your audience. Grab the free lead magnet and landing page template. In this guide, I'll show you how to make your free resource magnetic and your landing page irresistible. Get ready to transform your online presence and watch your community thrive. Head to showingupsolo.com/free to download the template now, and let's embark on this journey together.
And you really highlighted something that we often miss is we need to be able to take the reins in a sales conversation, and even in our marketing before they get there, to be like, this is how I work. Because if I'm coming to you and I'm like, hey, I want you to be the expert, and then I get on the call and I'm like, if my client wants me to be the expert, I need to show up as the expert. I need to demonstrate that I am. Wait. So like you knowing this, that yes, like getting on the call and being like, yes, this is how we do it. This is my process. This is how we work together. It's a game changer, because at the end of the day, they're going to feel like you are much better at what you do. You're very knowledgeable. You have it handled for them. Yeah. Versus being like, oh, well, I don't really know. What do you want?
Mm-hmm. Huge. And here's a secret tip for all you listeners who are still new and don't maybe have a little bit of imposter syndrome going on, and you don't feel like you can come to it from that position. They don't know that. If you go into the call and say, this is my process, this is how I do it, and these are my offers and the pricing structure, and if we want to do something custom, we can talk about that, but first I'm going to lay out whether it's your first client or your 100th client, they don't know. If you can come from it from a very confident, this is how I do it, take it or leave it, you feel a lot more, you come across a lot more authoritative than you do if you're all, well, let's see what works for you. what's your favorite way to do things? You know,
Exactly. You need to be able to lead your clients. And if you can truly lead them by coming into it and saying, like, the first step I always talk about is product. And this is really coming down to like what is this package going to be? What are you selling for strategy? But the other part is, what is the process you take them through? Like, what are the steps? Be able to get on a call and say, okay, you know what? Great. So when we do this type of strategy, we do. That makes them feel like they're just like, all right, great. I don't need to worry about this. I know this works. It's been tested. They don't know how many times you've done it or anything else, but there's a huge shift that's going to happen there. And what's interesting is I started doing this with corporate clients and they were like, okay, great. Like, where do I give you money? Because two things happened is number one, they knew I could handle it. But number two, we were setting up our relationship from a place of like, let's do this one project together, get the groundwork laid out. I can provide you with a much more accurate scope and budget. And everyone's going to be much happier than being like, here's our total year-long engagement based on our 20-minute conversation. And I have no idea what to expect. It's protecting everybody involved.
exactly. It's a great way to sort of have that first date kind
Yes.
of, with someone new. Now, I love alliteration, and when you reached out to me with this topic, you had 5 P's. I'm all about having. I have 3 P's in one of my things, and I have my acronyms. But so you had product, position, price, promotion, and preparation. Do you want to tell me a little bit about those elements of selling strategy?
Yeah, so product really comes down to two things. What do you like? This is the what. What is it going to be? It is probably something you're already doing. And what's the process behind it? Just being, we don't want to get into like, here's the deliverables, like features, benefits, title, packaging, like how does that all come together? That's really the product. And from there, it comes into the position. And one of the things I see a lot of people skip is position. Mm-hmm. They don't really think about how am I going to explain this? What's my unique value proposition? What makes this different? Why am I uniquely qualified to do this?
Yeah.
Because if you can't articulate those things in your marketing, your sales calls, you're going to have a very difficult time convincing anyone they actually need this. And the position is, hey, I'm an expert on this because of this. And this is why you can trust me. These are the kinds of results I've had, really being able to bring that together as part of it versus just being like, here's my package, here's a price. Hopefully I sell it.
Yeah. Coming at it from, and I love, and I think positioning as well is, it doesn't have to be, again, all about expertise and experience in the sense that, I need like lots of numbers to back me up. It could be something like, one of the things I include is that, well, I am neurodivergent. So that gives me a lens that gives me, it puts me in a position where I'm generally better suited to support fellow neurodivergents. I understand workflows that way. And, and so that positions me as perhaps the ideal person for that type of client. Versus having to have 20 plus years of experience or whatever. I can this is my unique selling point. This is what makes my brain space important and special to you.
Yeah. And I think part of position is not always going to be the skills and experience. It's going to be the what makes you you. Something I hear a lot from my corporate clients even is they just appreciate that the way my brain is able to work through things because I have a certain, not just years of experience, but I have a certain approach and thinking process to their complex problems. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. No one else thought of that. And and being able to articulate that with examples or, here's a campaign we worked on, that really helps them envision themselves to see, okay, I really like this offer, but now I actually see why I want this person to be the one to execute it.
Yeah. So do you think you need to have some kind of tangible deliverable to represent that strategic work? When I first started offering it, I felt like I had to create a PDF document with my strategy, which is difficult to do because a lot of the strategy calls, it depends on the conversation, depends on the client. Now, most
Yeah.
of the time, I just deliver a recording and a transcript, and I'm like, there it is.
So, and I think that's a really good question. So this really goes to the preparation step. So this is going to be a nuanced, it depends answer for something like coaching, like what you were talking about, the end of a power hour. It's going to be much more challenging to provide a, deliverable per se. Whereas with a content strategy, I can provide you with a content strategy playbook and be like, here, thud, here's your document. So part of the preparation step is making sure that you understand what are those takeaways for the clients. And I will say this, the more someone is paying for strategy, probably the more important it is that they have something tangible. And a great example is maybe for coaching, like you're going to provide them with a call. Maybe you're going to give them a summary of the action steps and you're going to put it in a pretty branded PDF. Like it could be relatively simple, but having something that feels like, yeah, I didn't just get the time, I got this thing. Because even if they never look at it, there is a psychological factor to being like, yeah, I have the paper.
Yeah. I got this piece of paper. I know what I'm doing.
I got a PDF I'm going to save and never look at again.
Exactly. It's like those millions of like lead magnets and courses and stuff that you downloaded and never opened, but they're there. So
yeah. The perfect example is I did this really robust content strategy for a corporate client like 5 years ago. I literally still bring it out when they'll say, why don't we do this? And I'll be like, part of the content strategy of 2019, here's a map on how we could do that.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of them filed it away and just kind of ignored it after we started working together.
Yeah. I've had this interesting situation where I'm subcontracting strategy for a client. And I used to have a teammate, Nicole. She used to co-host the podcast with me. And so we would just work internally and just deliver the end product to the client. And so we did all that stuff together. Sometimes it would be like through voice memos or emails. And it was never like a physical process.
Yeah.
And now I'm now doing, my contribution is literally the strategy work to my clients. And I have to put together a document. And just like it, like the first time I sat down to do it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like what do I even put in this? Like, it's so hard to separate what seems like common knowledge to you from what is common knowledge to your audience. Like something, just like one of the things, like explaining the difference between a LinkedIn newsletter and an email newsletter, and that they're totally different things, and like having to put the details in and just remembering to like communicate all that. And I think we forget how much knowledge that we take for granted.
And that for me is really and truly a sign that you're probably doing the right strategy work when you're just like, really? Do I really have to say this? Because it is so second nature to you. But here's your audience. You're so far apart on that and they don't recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's someone just said to me, like literally this morning, that they just learned something new about using camel case and hashtags. And I was like, duh, who doesn't? And I realized, well, like, no, if you don't do it day in, day out, you don't know to use camel case and hashtags.
Exactly.
Like, it's just one of those things, again, you just take this for granted. So yeah, I'm sorry. I totally got us off track there. We were going through product position. So how do you price it and how do you sell it?
Yeah, part of the selling comes down to like, what are the product and position, but we'll talk about the promotion. That's the other selling part. But in terms of price, you need to understand that whatever you like do for transactional tactical tasks, that's not your pricing for your strategy offer. Your strategy offer should be at a premium. That is going to be relative to your market, what you're offering, and everything else. But here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to pick your price randomly. So, please sit down and work through okay, here's what's involved. Here's how much time it's going to use. Like, this is kind of the baseline hourly rate. And not to say you're going to price it hourly, but you need to start from reality. Are there any hard costs to delivering this? Are there specific tools I need that are going to like start from a basis of real numbers and not engage in magical thinking to be like, okay, I think it'll be $1,000. Will you think or you know?
Yeah.
So, no random pricing, really just sit down and work the numbers. Even if you're uncomfortable with them, the more you can sit down and really think through your numbers, the more you're going to find places that you're probably undercharging or that you are not accounting for certain factors that need to absolutely be, mixed into that pricing strategy.
Yeah. Well, and it's things like charging for like how I came up with my power hour rate. I'm like, yeah, I kind of set I did set this is my rate. And I didn't expect it to be a main. It was just more like, this is my boundary that I'm setting with this rate. But then when I do usually incorporate a lower rate into like packages and stuff. Because that's like this one engagement, right? And it's got to incorporate all of the time it took to find that person and the marketing, because you've got to factor that in. Like, what was the cost to me to get that person for that 1 hour? Mm-hmm. And like when I'm coming up with like the cost of strategy for things like a content strategy or something, I don't sit down in front of the computer and barf out a content strategy in one sitting. I mull it over while I'm walking the dog or drinking a cup of tea. And there's it rents space in my brain for a couple days before it makes its way to the document. You got to account for that in your, so like, I might think, okay, it might only take me this much time to sit down and create the document, but I have to add in all those extra hours and then put those in there knowing full well that is all happening invisibly.
Yes. And I remember when I worked in agency, I had this discussion with my mentor and I was like, okay, so here's all the hours I bill because it's a highly billable environment. But I was like, what about the time I spend thinking about these campaigns on my drive home or on the weekend or whatever? And she's like, that's valid and billable time. And that really, I still carry that with me because in my mind, that was just thinking like, do I get paid to just think? Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so, and sometimes it's hard to factor, so that I like to account for it by having a higher hourly rate. I'm accounting for that extra brain space, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is such a fascinating conversation. I think I'm probably going to have you back on for a part 2 or something, because I really do think this could we just go on because it's such an important conversation to have too. But in the interest of respecting everybody's time, what do you think people should be taking away from this conversation, or what's your kind of key piece of advice for solopreneurs, service providers who are beginning to realize they should be starting to start selling strategy, or just at the point where they're ready to start selling strategy?
I'm actually going to work in the last P, promotion.
Okay.
So one of the things that a lot of us love to do is create things. So we do all the work. We're like, I'm going to position it. I'm going to create the Google document. I'm going to figure out the framework. And then we don't promote it. If you aren't willing to do the work to promote your strategy offer, don't bother creating the strategy offer at all, because it's just going to languish on your website. No one is actually going to see it. And so you need to be willing to be like, okay, I really believe in this strategy. I really want to be known for this thing. And I need to build some sort of thought leadership. Maybe you're going to do podcast interviews about it. Maybe you're going to use SEO strategies. I don't really care how you market it, but I do want you to have a promotional strategy and plan behind this so that you can get traction and get known for this. Because ultimately the goal of what you want is people being able to refer you, recommend you, to see you on social media or listen to a podcast episode and be like, yeah, I need that. Sign me up. Yeah. Versus you having to be out there being like, hello, I'm waiting for someone to come to me so I can offer them the strategy offer.
I would almost say promote it before you do all the back end work. I mean, you need to have a rough idea, but you don't have to have it perfect. You can just start putting it out there and saying, hey, I'm offering strategy sessions now. Get in touch for more deets. And,
and And one of the things I really encourage people to do when they're starting to think about the product, like go do market validation, go talk to past clients, talk to people in your audience, doing some strategy sessions that are really like the light version of this, you really will, to really learn and be able to incorporate that into is really important because yes, you want to promote your offer, but you also need to make sure it's something that's actually filling a real need that people will pay money for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd be surprised at how many. I actually even have. I've done a bit of when I was validating my idea to do coaching. I did an exchange with some clients. So in exchange for them working hours, I offered coaching, and then I've continued that with some people just because it's mutually beneficial. And it was interesting because I was like, okay, so how many hours of coaching do I owe you? And they're like, well, yours is so valuable. I don't feel right, like doing the full. And it was just, even when I'm offering it an hour for hour, they found it so valuable that they didn't feel right doing an hour for hour. They were like, no, I feel like this is the right amount of work for what you've given me. And that's like, you don't know how valuable what you're doing is until you've tested it and you've heard people's feedback and input on it.
And I love that you brought up the fact that you had that external reflection, that validation back to you.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, like we don't always have the best instincts, most of us, about our pricing, the value we bring. So being able to get that kind of testing cycle and getting feedback is so, so important because at the end of the day, what we want for this offer is like client problems on one side, what you can think, and like overlapping circles, that Venn diagram, like that's the sweet spot in the middle because having it, I don't care what offer you have as a service provider, no one wants it.
Yeah.
It's a waste of your time. You're going to be, it's like pushing a boulder uphill. Don't do that to yourself. Be like, you know what? The last 10 client projects I've worked on, I see this pattern. Or I've talked to these people in the market. Interesting. Okay. Be in the business of that pattern recognition so that you can fill that need versus, creating things that nobody asked for.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just the value is there. Like you have to see the value to the client. Just like as an example, this morning I woke up and I just really didn't feel like cooking breakfast for the kids. So I Ubered some Starbucks. And even though it's marked up and the delivery fee is like crazy and like, the value to me wasn't the cost. The value was that I could spend an extra 30 minutes in bed this morning, which I needed. And so like that's the value to me as the client. And you have to remember that for your client too. You're freeing up time and brain space and like removing stressors from their life. What is the value of that? Right? If an hour of my time means that they can get 10 new clients, I mean, that's just a number I pulled out of my, but and each of those clients signs on for $1,000, then theoretically that hour's worth $10,000, like you've got to think about it. It's not about what it costs you as much as, I mean, you have to factor that in, but it's more about what it gives them or what the value is to them.
I use this analogy with my clients is I will buy the cut fruit at the grocery store. If you've ever wondered who it's for me, because if I pay for it and I'm paying a premium for it and I can see it in my fridge and it's already cut up, I will eat it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I buy the whole cantaloupe, good luck. I'm going to throw away the cantaloupe.
Yeah. 100%.
So yeah, that's what your clients want. Like they don't want the cantaloupe. They want the cut up fruit salad.
Exactly. And you're just charging them for cutting up the fruit. And
yes. Yeah. And you might be like, oh, that's so like, why do they need the fruit cut up? It doesn't matter why they need the fruit cut up for them. If they need the fruit cut up and you have a knife and a cantaloupe, do it.
Yeah. They want it done. So, yes, 100%. I love that. It's like, it's so easy to think, oh, this is something they could just do themselves. They wouldn't be coming to you if they could do it themselves. They wouldn't sell cut up fruit in the grocery store if everyone had time to cut up their fruit.
And sometimes people can do things and just don't want to. Like as my sister says, who works in my business, she said, sometimes you got to throw money at the problem.
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to solve it yourself. And that is valid. If your clients want to throw money at the problem, let you sell them the strategy, which will be the solution to the problem.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Okay, well, this has been such a great conversation. Like I said, I'm probably going to have you come back on for a part two, because I feel like we could dive even deeper into this. But I think we're running short of time now. So before we go, would you like to let everyone know where they can find you online, like how they can get in touch, or is there anything?
So I have a podcast called the BS Free Service Business Podcast. That is all the places the podcasts are found. You can also find me at bsfreebusiness.com, and I hang out on Instagram and Threads at bsfreebusiness.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll make sure we leave all the links in the show notes of this episode as well. Thank you so much, Maggie, for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you've all enjoyed it, all my listeners. I think it's a really important conversation to have, and it kind of gives you a different way of thinking about the services you offer and what you do. So
thank you so much
for coming, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Showing Up Solo. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review or sharing your thoughts in the comments. These simple gestures help us appease the algorithm gods and continue to bring you great, free education. Ready to navigate the world of marketing with confidence? Take the Marketing Compass quiz, available at showingupsolo.com, to discover the next phase of your journey. And don't forget to explore our range of courses and coaching programs while you're there. Let's transform your solo venture into a thriving success story together. Until the next episode, keep showing up and making your mark in the world of solopreneurship. See you soon.